Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for being here. Today is part two of a what was originally going to be a two-part mini-series, although I think I'm now going to possibly make a third video. Just in doing these videos, it's become clear that there's just so much information. So today's video is going to be predominantly on propaganda and censorship, and then I think I'm going to do a third video for next week dealing with cult mentality and uh, conspiracy theories, and there's potentially even more subject matter for possibly even probably a fourth video, which is going to be on cognitive dissonance, um, uh, uh, confirmation bias, the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. The list goes on. I can probably do something on logical fallacies. So, so that brings us to today's video. Please like and subscribe, and uh, leave a comment as well. Thanks. All right. So, as I did with the first video, excuse me, from last week. If you haven't seen it, go and have a look. I'm going to give a quick definition of fascism before we get into the propaganda and censorship side of things. So, fascism is a form of political behavior marked by obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and by compensatory cults of unity, energy, and purity, in which a mass-based party of committed nationalist militants work in uneasy but effective collaboration with traditional elites. You know, I'm going to use current state of America as an example for a lot of this. So you look at the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, all these military or militia style groups in the United States who are working with, the House of Congress, the Republican House of Congress, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, and traditional elites like Donald Trump being elected again, right? So how to spot a fascist? Umberto Eco, who I'd never heard of before, but it's going to come up again in the article I'm going to show you right after this slide. Um, he's got a list here, a practical list for identifying fascists, so the cult of tradition, and anything that doesn't fall into that cult's view of tradition is, demonized. The rejection of modernism. Now, I also find that if it suits them, right? So let's say, for example, mobile phone, X, social media, that's all pretty modern, but it suits them to use those. So they don't demonize that sort of thing, although they do have a go at old TikTok because it's Chinese and they demonize the Chinese. Uh, Whether they're right or wrong on that, like that's a different story, but that's an example. So rejection of modernism, but only when it doesn't suit them, right? The cult of action for action's sake. Disagreement is treason. Well, we just seen Elon Musk go and what's his name? The new representative in Congress. Yeah, he's got. Anyway, he said something about Donald Trump, I think it was, and the next thing Elon Musk is on the tweets. Talking about how his words are treason and he should be dealt with appropriately. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy fear of difference. Yes, demonization of anything that is different to them. Appeal to social frustration. So, for example, MAGA are constantly appealing to the public, regarding the state of the U.S. economy, which happens to be out of the G8, 7, sorry, um, happens to be the strongest and the best. But MAGA have made it into something just because inflation is slightly higher than what they think it should be. The obsession with the plot, well, that's QAnon mainly, and we'll talk and conspiracy theories. So we'll talk about that in the next video. But like MAGA have got an obsession with a huge amount of plots, like all without any basis, all of them untrue, all of them a load of bull. And the enemy is both weak and strong. Yeah, so Donald Trump's always saying, Sleepy Joe, you can't lift a finger, can't do this, can't do that. But at the same time, the deep state are strong and that they must be much stronger, and so that they can beat the deep state and blah blah blah. All right, so let's quickly have a look at this. I'm going to breeze over this article. It's only 3 pages long. If you do want to read the whole article, I'm going to leave a link for this article in the description, so you can go click on that link and you can read the whole thing. So this is posted on September the 7th, 2022, so just over 2 years ago. Last week, President Biden declared that the MAGA philosophy is semi-fascism, and right-wing heads exploded. Seems they have no idea what fascism is. Well, they do know exactly what it is. They just it's fake outrage, right? So let's talk about it. But first, remember, we're talking about fascism, not Nazism. The Nazis were a unique type of fascists who engaged in virulent anti-Semitism, genocide, and a fanatical effort to achieve world domination. That's not really comparable to fascism as seen in Italy, Spain, Argentina, and elsewhere. As Umberto Eco summed it up, there was only one Nazism, but the fascist game can be played in many forms, and the name of the game does not change. While fascism is always right-wing, it does not have a particular governing program. Fascism is instead a series of tactics for gaining and holding power. The 3 essential fascist tactics are: 1. Demonization of domestic enemies. Imaginary or not, I should add, because most of them are imaginary. Preposterous lies, so that's your propaganda, your conspiracy theories, everything, all that, your intellectual dishonesty, all that sort of thing, and contempt for democratic institutions. All right. Let us consider each one in turn. So I'm just going to quickly. Fascism creates a myth of victimhood. That the majority of the population is in a humiliating decline from a past greatness because of a singled out minority populations. So people of different religions, different skin color, LGBTQ plus, etc. It's an us against them crisis. The myth goes, right, and it is that it's a myth. The targeted racial, ethnic, religious, or gender minorities and the liberals who support them are thus framed as not just opponents but enemies, demonized so that the majority can feel justified in hating and repressing them. In fact, Make America Great Again is the quintessential fascist slogan. It's a myth that celebrates the good old days of white supremacy. Let's move on to the next one. Oh, I do apologize. Okay, well, let's get out of there. I don't know why that's doing that. Right, so moving on to propaganda. One definition: it's information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a political cause or point of view. Correct. And so propaganda is a communication that is primarily used to influence or persuade an audience to further an agenda, which may not be objective and may be selectively representing facts to encourage a particular synthesis or perception, or using loaded language to produce an emotional rather than a rational response to the information that is being presented. Propaganda can be found in a wide variety of different contexts. A wide range of materials and media are used for conveying propaganda messages, which changed as new technologies were invented, including paintings, cartoons, posters, pamphlets, films, radio shows, TV shows, and websites. And more recently, the digital age has given rise to new ways of disseminating propaganda. For example, bots and algorithms, and social media in general are currently being used to create computational propaganda and fake or biased news and spread it on social media. Right, if you look at the second paragraph on this slide, in 1929, In a 1929 literary debate with Edward Bernays, Everett Dean Martin argues that propaganda is making puppets of us. We are moved by hidden strings which the propaganda manipulates. And if you just go down to the bottom there, the third paragraph, NATO's 2011 guidance for military public affairs defines propaganda as information, ideas, doctrines, or special appeals disseminated to influence the opinion, emotions, attitudes, or behavior of any specified group in order to benefit the sponsor, either directly or indirectly. Identifying propaganda has always been a problem. This is where you need to touch up on your critical thinking skills and being able to discern what objectivity and the difference between objectivity and subjectivity is. The main difficulties have involved differentiating propaganda from other types of persuasion and avoiding a biased approach. Richard Allen Nelson provides a definition of the term. Propaganda is neutrally defined as a systemic form of purposeful persuasion that attempts to influence the emotions, attitudes, opinions, and actions of specified target audiences for ideological, political, or commercial purposes. The second paragraph, propaganda can often be recognized by the rhetorical strategies used in its design. In the 1930s, the Institute for Propaganda Analysis identified a variety of propaganda techniques that were commonly used in newspapers and on the radio, which were the mass media of the time period. Moving on. Propaganda is sometimes evaluated based on the intention and goals of the individual or institutions who created it. According to historian Zbigniew Zeman, propaganda is defined as either white, gray, or black. And then it goes on to define all three of those. I think black being the worst. The propaganda seeks to change the way people understand an issue or situation for the purpose of changing their actions and expectations in ways that are desirable to the interest group. Propaganda, in this sense, serves as a corollary to censorship, which we will get onto in a minute, in which the same purpose is achieved, not by filling people's minds with approved information, but by preventing people from being confronted with opposing points of view. What sets propaganda apart from other forms of advocacy is the willingness of the propagandist to change people's understandings through deception and confusion rather than persuasion and understanding. The leaders of an organization know the information to be one-sided or untrue, but this may not be true for the rank and file members who help to disseminate the propaganda. Very interesting. And then just another quick one here. Of all the potential, so when I was doing this video, there was a lot of information that I've left out. Obviously, I could go on for hours, right? But I thought that this was quite poignant, also because kids they're vulnerable because they're learning. I'll read the article. Of all the potential targets for propaganda, children are the most vulnerable because they are the least prepared with the critical reasoning and contextual comprehension they need to determine whether the message is a propaganda or not. I think that's a bit of a typo. I know in the UK, and I believe also in the USA and probably other civilized Western countries, children are only taught critical thinking skills at university level, and that boggles my mind. Why they don't start much younger, maybe even at the start of high school, start to learn critical thinking skills, critical analysis, that sort of thing, because I think it's such an important tool for this day and age. Just a quick side note, if anybody here watching this watches the David Pacman show, he recently had a daughter, I believe it was, a little baby, and he's written a few books for kids, specifically, with his daughter in mind. And I think one was on science, but I think the first one he did was, I think it was called something like Critical Thinking Skills for Kids. I haven't read it. I don't have kids, but I think it got pretty good reviews. and go check it out. Maybe if you're interested in your kids starting to learn critical thinking at an earlier age, um, especially if they might not be thinking of going to university, although they should definitely go. Also, this day and age, you need to get some sort of degree behind you. Um, the attention children give their environment during development due to the process of developing their understanding of the world causes them to absorb propaganda indiscriminately. Also, children are highly imitative. Studies by Albert Bandura, Dorothea Ross, and Sheila A. Ross in the 1960s indicated that, to a degree, socialization, formal education, and standardized television programs can be seen as using propaganda for the purpose of indoctrination. The use of propaganda in schools was highly prevalent during the 1930s and 1940s in Germany in the form of the Hitler Youth. And of course, we know how propaganda, played a massive role in during the Cold War in the Soviet Union. They were, I mean, the Russians are masters of propaganda. I mean, yeah, it's just because people like haven't got the skills to discern what's going on, and they need to learn those skills. All right, censorship. The suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc., that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security. So, as you might have seen in previous videos of mine, I was born in South Africa during apartheid, grew up during apartheid. I was a teenager in the 80s, the height of apartheid, and censorship was, I don't remember much propaganda per se. I mean, there's certain things that I seem to remember, like the demonization of the other. In other words, black people being subhuman. That was, why I suppose something that was brought across in propaganda, although I can't remember specific articles, but I do remember censorship. A lot of it, our newspapers were censored. We weren't like, so for example, the film The Exorcist was, we weren't, that was banned, right? The film Pink Floyd, The Wall, banned. My school that I went to, fortunately, started showing us certain things, films, before the end of apartheid, and I got to see The Wall. And Pink Floyd is a massively a massive favorite band of mine, one of my favorites. But I do remember censorship, from a racial point of view, from a religious point of view, because of course the nationalist government of apartheid were Christian nationalists, and I spoke about that in my previous video, apartheid versus MAGA. So if you haven't seen that, go and check it out. Um, right, censorship is the suppression of speech, public communication, or other information. This may be done on the basis that such material is considered objectionable, harmful, sensitive, or inconvenient. Another thing we never had was, so nothing, pornography completely banned, no naked anything at all. If there were magazines that had, topless women in them, their nipples had to be covered. So there was that, that was about you could get maybe a picture of a woman in a bikini bottom, side on, so you could see, part of the breast, but that was pushing it. That really was that. There were magazines, but they were like definitely 18 plus, and that's all they showed, right? Um, Not that I agree with glamour magazines or anything, but that's just to show you, whereas here in the UK and of course in the US, none of that sort of stuff is censored. I mean, it's perfectly legal, right? Censorship can be conducted by governments, private institutions, when an individual, such as an author or other creator, engages in censorship of their own works or speech. It is referred to as self-censorship. General censorship occurs in a variety of different media, including speech, books, music, films, and other arts, the press, radio, television, and the internet for a variety of claimed Reasons including national security, to control obscenity, pornography, and hate speech, to protect children. Now, we've got obviously got nothing against protecting children. There's, same with propaganda. 90% bad, 10% probably good, right? Like censorship, 90% bad, 10% good. You've got to have some sort of censorship of something, right? You've got to be able. Here we have something similar to a First Amendment right, like free speech, but not all speech is free, right? Hate speech over here is illegal. You can go to jail for disseminating hate speech. So not all, but for the most part, and I think often the term, the example that's often given is it's illegal to shout fire in a theater if there is no fire because it can cause a stampede. People can get crushed and killed and there was no fire, right? So not all speech is free. Um, right. To protect children and other vulnerable groups, to promote or restrict political or religious views, and to prevent slander and libel. Specific rules and regulations regarding censorship vary between legal jurisdictions and or private organizations. Um, Proponents have sought to justify it using different rationales for various types of information censored. Let's have a look at political censorship. It's the third one down. Occurs when governments hold back information from their citizens. This is often done to exert control over the populace and prevent free expression that might foment rebellion. Military censorship, the second one down. I don't really have a problem with that for the most part. Do have a problem with religious censorship, and but I think I think we're dealing more with the political censorship, right? I found this quite interesting. Reverse censorship. So I'm going to read this, but for me, this is propaganda, right? So reverse censorship, I would say, is sort of the same as propaganda. So flooding the public, often through online social networks, with false or misleading information, or disinformation, is sometimes called reverse censorship. American legal scholar Tim Wu has explained that this type of information control, sometimes by state actors, can distort or drown out disfavored speech through the creation of dissemination of fake news. The payment of fake commentators, and the deployment of propaganda robots. There you go. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we could focus on, but I am going to just, zone in on social media because I think that's prevalent in our society and our day and age. Rising use of social media in many nations has led to the emergence of citizens organizing protests through social media. Not always a bad thing, of course, sometimes called Twitter revolutions. The most notable of these social media-led protests were the Arab Spring uprisings, good, starting in 2010. In response to the use of social media in these protests, the Tunisian government began a hack of Tunisian citizens' Facebook accounts, and reports arose of accounts being deleted. Automated systems can be used to censor social media posts and therefore limit what citizens can say online. So that's your algorithms, right? Your YouTube algorithms, all the algorithms are fine-tuned these days, and they become even finer tuned as time goes on and as we sort of learn more about algorithms. This most notably occurs in China, where social media posts are automatically censored depending on content. In 2013, Harvard political science professor Gary King led a study to determine what caused social media posts to be censored and found that posts mentioning the government were not more or less likely to be deleted if they were supportive or critical of the government. Sorry, on that post were not more or less likely. Interesting. Um, Posts mentioning collective action. Oh, I see. Posts mentioning collective action were more likely to be deleted. So they weren't that phased if you were being critical of the government, but if you were causing like sort of a gathering of some sort, that was bad. Oh, Interesting. Um, Currently, social media censorship appears primarily as a way to restrict internet users' ability to organize protests. There you go. For the Chinese government, seeing citizens unhappy with local governance is beneficial as state and national leaders can replace unpopular officials. Oh, there you go. Research has proved that criticism is tolerable on social media sites, therefore, it is not censored unless it has a higher chance of collective action. It is not important whether the criticism is supportive or unsupportive of the state's leaders. The main priority of censoring certain social media posts is to make sure that no big actions are being made due to something that was said on the internet. In December 2022, Elon Musk, the owner and CEO of Twitter, released internal documents from the social media microblogging site to journalists Matt Taibbi, Michael Schellenberger, and Barry Weiss. The analysis of these files on Twitter, collectively called the Twitter files, explored the content moderation and visibility filtering carried out in collaboration with the Federal Bureau of Investigation on the Hunter Biden laptop controversy. All completely made up, all a load of bollocks, all a load of nonsense. And why am I not surprised to see Elon Musk over there? On the platform, okay, we'll leave TikTok. I don't have much to say about TikTok. All right, and then just to finish off here, fascist tactics. Only one political party is allowed in the government. Terror tactics and propaganda are used to achieve political goals. The use of secret police and prison camps to remove possible threats. We don't know what's going to happen after January the 20th next year in the US. That's going to be interesting. Hopefully, the US has got strong enough guardrails. And I heard today, being the Tuesday, the 17th of December, that Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, has lost, not lost, but he has a member that has going to remain a Republican, but is not going to take part in any votes or committees or anything like that. So I think it's like down to a majority of one. I think it's 216 to 215. So what they hopefully nothing's going to get pushed through, but we definitely know that Donald Trump is going to weaponize his Department of Justice. We just don't know how bad it is going to be yet. And then finally, brainwashing the youth in special schools. And we know what Donald Trump wants to do with the education system in America. He basically wants to destroy it, like, cancel it. I think his pick for education secretary is a conspiracy theorist, or it's part of Project 2025, something like that. I'm not quite sure. I need to look into it, but brainwashing the youth, that really is something that needs to be watched closely. Okay, guys, thank you very much again for being here. Thanks for sitting through the video. Again, please, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe. I want to get this video out to as many people as possible, and subscribing and liking sort of kicks the algorithm in and helps me out. I'm nowhere near sort of like getting anything financially yet, but it's all about building that algorithm that we spoke about earlier. All right, thanks for listening, and take care. We'll speak again soon. Ciao, ciao.